Previously on, a young boy is thrust into the harsh realities of Viking life, facing the bitter cold and the weight of tradition. A boy stands at the threshold of manhood, his bare feet sinking into the frost-kissed earth, the temperature hovering around 15 degrees Celsius. The air bites at his skin, sharp as the bone-handled knife tucked into his belt, inscribed with runes that whisper of courage and sacrifice. He's surrounded by towering pines, their dark silhouettes swaying gently under the weight of a winter storm. The scent of pine resin torches flickering to life nearby, casting long shadows that dance like restless spirits. This is the moment of truth, a rite shared by generations of Vikings who believed that to become a warrior, one must first confront the unforgiving elements with nothing more than resolve. But what does it mean to be brave? The boy's heart races as he recalls the tales of those who walked this path before him, some of whom never returned. The initiation, a brutal test of will, claims roughly 20% of boys. This tradition is not just a rite. It is an unyielding expectation, sculpted by ancestors who viewed vulnerability as weakness. He chokes back a wave of fear that threatens to surface, reminding himself that silence is strength. The elders stand at the periphery, their faces cloaked in shadow, the deep lines etched in their weathered skin telling stories of battles and losses. Their eyes burn with the intensity of the flames before them, filled with a mix of pride and cruelty. They will not guide him through this. They will watch, silent as the wind howls through the trees. The boy grips the hilt of his knife tighter, feeling the cold metal against his palm as he readies himself for the first step into the unknown. The elders raise their torches, the flickering firelight reflecting off their eyes, igniting a primal energy that fills the clearing. The boy feels the weight of their expectations pressing down on him, a palpable force that makes the air thick. He knows he must lift his chin, show them he is ready. He takes a deep breath, filling his lungs with the icy air that stings like 1,000 needles, and steps forward into the darkness, each footfall echoing the heartbeat of the earth itself. As he walks, he wonders if he will ever return to the warmth of the hearth, to laughter and tales shared among kin. Would his spirit remain entwined with the whispers of the forest, or would he become just another shadow in the night? The cold envelops him, a reminder of what lies ahead, yet he trudges on. The light from the torches fades into the distance behind him, swallowed by the night. And somewhere deep inside, he questions himself. Could he truly become the warrior they all expected him to be? He didn't cry. He felt the chills seep into his bones, but he kept moving forward. What awaited him in the shadows? Could he survive it? As the sun dipped below the jagged horizon, casting long shadows over the village, the air swirled with a biting cold, a prelude to the night that would test the very essence of a boy's soul. Pine resin torches flickered to life, their light dancing against the encroaching darkness, illuminating the faces of the gathered villagers. They were a sea of fur-clad figures, eyes gleaming with a mixture of pride and dread. The aroma of burning wood mingled with the sharpness of frost. It was the scent of fear, the promise of courage, and the taste of blood all wrapped into one. At the center of it all stood young Eric, heart hammering against his ribcage. This was no ordinary night. It was the night of initiation, the moment when boys became men, or, as history often recorded, when they would never return. The freezing temperatures hovered around 10 degrees, biting into exposed skin, yet it was the chill of uncertainty that pierced deeper. What if he failed? What if he joined the 20% of boys who never emerged victorious from this arena? He clenched his jaw, glancing at the runic bone-handled knife that lay before him, its blade shimmering ominously in the torchlight, a testament to the power of the gods and the weight of expectation. The villagers began to chant, their voices rising like the smoke from the torches, wrapping around Eric's mind like a vine. each syllable pressed down on his chest, mixing with the pulse of wild fear that coursed through him. Is this what it takes to be brave? He wondered, eyes darting from the knife to the men surrounding him, their faces set in stone. They didn't call it cruelty. They called it strength, a rite of passage that demanded blood, sweat, and the acceptance of fate. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to move forward despite it, one elder had told him, a man whose own courage had been tested countless times. But here, at this moment, with a knife so close and the freezing wind biting at his resolve, Eric felt anything but courageous. He took a deep breath, the icy air filling his lungs, and as he exhaled, his breath misted in the fading light, swirling like the doubts in his mind. But he stood there, unwavering, as the villagers' chants rose to a fever pitch, urging him on. They were his ancestors, his people, marking the line between who he was and who he could become. And as the final notes of their song hung in the air, the tension felt as thick as the frost clinging to the ground. In that moment, he realized something profound. This was his choice, his destiny, and the arena of fear was his to conquer. He reached for the knife, fingers trembling, not just from the cold, but from the weight of what lay ahead. He didn't cry. Instead, a fierce determination ignited within him. And as he gripped the hilt, the silence that followed felt heavier than the snow. What awaited him on the other side of this moment was unknown, yet he knew one thing. He had to step into the darkness to find his light. In the stillness of the night, the boy stood at the edge of the ritual circle, his breath visible in the frigid air, a ghostly mist mingling with the soft glow of pine resin torches flickering in the dark. Each flame danced like a restless spirit, casting long shadows that stretched and twisted like the ancestors watching from beyond the veil. Their eyes, he imagined, were sharp and judgmental, demanding courage and silence as he faced a night meant to forge him into a man, or shatter him entirely. Would he rise as a warrior, or would he be another name on the list of boys who never returned? The temperature hovered around 15 degrees C, the kind of cold that gnawed at your bones, a reminder that the world had little mercy for weakness. He gripped the bone-handled knife at his waist, its runes etched into the handle glowing faintly in the torchlight, an ancestral promise of strength. Each letter whispered tales of valor, of battles won and losses endured. But tonight, the greatest battle would be fought within. Would they see him falter? Would he disappoint them? He took a step forward, the frost crunching beneath his feet, a sound loud enough to shatter the stillness. The circle was marked with stones, each one a sentinel of the past, a reminder of what it meant to confront fear. Silence was expected, yet inside him a tempest brewed, swirling like the winter winds that howled across the fjords at this time of year. He had trained for this, waited for his chance to prove himself, but now self-doubt nibbled at his resolve like a winter wolf at a wounded deer. A chill gust swept through the clearing, sending the flames to flicker wildly. He shivered, but it wasn't just the cold that caused the tremor. What haunted him more was the thought of failure. 20% of boys who faced this night never returned. What if he was one of them? What if he stepped into that circle and found nothing but the echoes of his own despair? He closed his eyes briefly, inhaling deeply, the acrid scent of burning wood merging with the crisp air. It filled his lungs and grounded him. This was his moment. This was how he would meet the silence. Unseen, the ancestors bore down on him, their expectations heavy as the ice that coated the trees around him. He was here to become something greater than himself, but what lay ahead remained obscured by the fog of uncertainty. The night deepened, shadows converging upon him, and he could feel the weight of the silence pressing in, ready to engulf him. He gripped the knife tighter, ready to carve his destiny into the fabric of this chilling night. Would he emerge victorious? Or would he become just another whisper in the wind? He didn't cry. The cold bit deeper, and all that surrounded him felt like a judgment. The darkness loomed larger, and as he stepped toward the heart of the circle, the silence became a living thing, waiting to consume him whole. The forest loomed like a dark whisper, pine trees standing guard over the boy as he stared into the deepening twilight. The air was biting, the temperature hovering around 15 degrees, each breath visible as a ghostly puff. He could feel the frost creeping into his bones, a reminder of the harsh Scandinavian winters that had shaped his forefathers. He flexed his fingers, the leather grip of the bone-handled knife cool against his palm, adorned with simple runes that spoke of courage and sacrifice. This knife had been passed down for generations, a legacy, a promise, and now it was an anchor pulling him deeper into the icy waters of expectation. What if he were not enough? He thought of the stories, grand tales of warriors who had carved their names into the sagas, each more glorious than the last. Stories of bravery, of blood spilled in the name of honor, where failure meant not just personal shame, but a stain on the clan's legacy. The weight of those expectations pressed down on him like the heavy snow clinging to the branches above. He could almost hear the echo of his father's voice, rumbling low like thunder. You are made of the same frost as the ancestors before you. Prove it. Behind him, the flickering light from the pine resin torches cast shadows that danced along the ground, twisting and turning like the doubts in his mind. Each torch was a beacon, illuminating the path of tradition he was expected to follow. Yet they also cast ominous shadows, reminders of the 20% of boys who never returned from the initiation. Did they feel this same weight? Did they tremble beneath the pressure of their lineage, or had they embraced it with fierce resolve? He took a step forward, the crunch of snow underfoot sharp and deliberate, breaking the silence that enveloped him. His heart raced as he felt the stares of the clan's elders piercing through the darkness, judging him, waiting for a sign that he was worthy. He could not falter. He could not fail. Yet the fear coiled in his stomach, a snake ready to strike. But what truly defined worthiness? With each moment that passed, the forest seemed to close in around him, its darkness both comforting and suffocating. He was standing on the precipice of destiny, teetering between the embrace of honor and the abyss of disgrace. The wind howled, swirling snow around him like a tumultuous ocean, and the flickering torchlight cast ghostly reflections in his eyes. In this moment, he felt utterly alone. What would his ancestors think if he stumbled? He clenched his jaw, the cold biting deeper, seeping into his very core. The silence pressed against him, wrapping around him like a shroud, and he stood frozen, caught between the expectations of the past and the uncertainty of the future. And what if he took a step into that darkness, not as a warrior, but as a boy still searching for himself? Part 5. The cold embrace of Earth. Lying on the bare ground, he feels the chill seep into his bones, a reminder of the harshness of his world. He lay spread-eagle on the frost-bitten earth, the cold clawing up through his back like 1,000 hungry fingers. A thin layer of snow dusted the ground, each crystalline flake a bitter reminder of the brutal winter that enveloped his village. The sky above, a slate-gray blanket, threatened more of the same, but for now, it was silent. Only the distant crackling of pine resin torches crackling in the village center broke the stillness. The smell of burning wood mingled with the sharp air, a scent that would forever haunt his memories of this initiation. But what drove a boy to lie here, exposed and unprotected, as the temperature sank to a staggering 15 degrees? The elders had said that this was the way to become a warrior, to feel the earth's cold embrace and learn resilience. Yet, with each shiver that ran through his body, he questioned if this was strength or madness. The initiation loomed like a specter, with roughly 20% of the boys who started this rite never returning, their fates whispered only in hushed tones around the hearth fires. His breath formed small clouds in the biting air, merging with the mist that swirled around him. A bone-handled knife lay beside him, inscribed with simple runes, symbols of courage and protection. He could just reach it if he dared to move, but the chill was a weight that pinned him down, demanding submission. The knife seemed to pulse with warmth in contrast to the bitter cold, but he was bound by the ritual's demands. The ground felt alive beneath him, pulsing with life and death, the stories of those who had come before him infusing the soil. He could almost hear their whispers, tales of bravery intertwined with caution, echoing back to a time when this land was wild and untamed. Perhaps the earth was smarter than him, bearing secrets that only the cold could unlock. As he lay there, the world around him dissolved into a blur of white and gray, a canvas for his thoughts. Would he rise as a warrior, or would he join the silent ones beneath the frost? With his heart pounding, he closed his eyes and tried to embrace the cold. But what if the earth, in all its unforgiving harshness, had a lesson in surrender? He heard distant voices, the laughter of those who had made it through, climbing over the barrier of his own fear, sending pangs of longing through him. He fought to remain still, to conquer the whispers and the frost, but the chill wrapped tighter, more insistent. And then, the ground shifted beneath him, a tremor that felt like a heartbeat. The weight of the world pressed down harder, and the cold seeped deeper into his bones. Who would he be when the sun rose again, if he could rise at all? Part 6. The Flicker of Hope. Previously on, the young Viking warriors faced an intimidating initiation ritual, shrouded in darkness and uncertainty. A distant torchlight dances in the darkness, its flicker reminiscent of a heartbeat. Steady, yet fragile, far beyond the icy fields, where the howling wind carves jagged trails in the snow, the flame calls to a boy crouching in the frigid silence. He shivers, the cold gnawing at him like the gnashing teeth of winter, temperatures plunging to a biting 20 dirty. His breath forms wisps of fog that dissolve almost immediately, as if even the air conspires against him. How did any of them come to find themselves here on the verge of manhood, casting shadows against the pale moonlight? He grips the bone-handled knife that rests against his thigh, its runes whispering ancient promises of strength and valor. The blade shines, reflecting the torchlight like a silent companion. In this desolate stretch of land, where only the bravest dared tread, hope flickers like that distant flame, a beacon of warmth, a remnant of the love he left behind. But the very act of holding the knife feels heavy, like the weight of destiny itself pressing down on his shoulders. He knows that the initiation ritual is not just a test of courage, but a cruel game of chance. Roughly 20% of boys never return from these trials. Was he ready to face that possibility? He could almost picture his mother's face, framed by the flickering light of their hearth, her laugh mingling with the aroma of spiced stew simmering over the fire. Would she weep if he fell? Would she even know if he was lost to the icy grip of this merciless night? Such thoughts swirled around in his mind, threatening to drown out the resolve he desperately clung to. But he couldn't afford the luxury of fear. Fear was the enemy of his ancestors, a shadow that could suffocate even the most determined spirit. Minutes stretched into eternity as the roar of the wind intensified, as if urging him to move, to flee, or fight. The torchlight flickered again, teasing him with its warmth. It promised safety, family, and the comfort of home. Yet he sat still, the ground beneath him hard and unyielding like the fate that awaited him. What kind of warrior would he become if he turned back now? If he chose the familiar over the unknown? And then, in that moment, as the icy breath of night clutched at his heart. He heard it. A faint rustle, the unmistakable sound of branches snapping underfoot. The darkness felt alive, and his pulse raced, a wild drum in the stillness. Fear gnawed at the edges of his resolve, and for a fleeting second, he thought he might just bolt back toward that flickering light, back to the life he knew. But the flicker of hope in his heart fought against the tide of dread. He didn't cry. He couldn't afford to. And as he pushed himself to his feet, the bone-handled knife glinting in the pale light, he felt the weight of his ancestors behind him. The darkened woods held mysteries he couldn't yet fathom, but he had made his choice. He stepped forward into the uncertainty, the cold wrapping around him like an embrace, and the flickering torchlight became a memory. A ghost trailing behind him, whispering of what he might lose. The moon hung high, casting a ghostly light across the frozen landscape, illuminating the boy standing at the edge of the darkened forest. He could feel the chill seeping into his bones, the temperature plummeting to a biting 15 degrees, a cruel reminder of the initiation he was about to face. Around him, the faint glow of pine resin torches flickered like distant stars, struggling against the relentless winter wind. Each breath he took formed a cloud of vapor, vanishing into the night like the hopes of those who had come before him, those who had failed. A knot tightened in his stomach as he gazed at the open clearing, the very ground where countless boys had stood before him, trembling with anticipation, some breaking under the weight of expectation. Would he, too, succumb to fear? Or would he rise to the challenge, like a warrior summoned by the ancestors? He clenched the bone-handled knife tightly in his fist, its runes glistening dully under the moonlight. Ancient symbols carved into the surface speaking of strength, courage, and the blood of his forebears. Why do the whispers of the past call to me now? He wondered, his heart racing with both fear and defiance. This was more than just a rite of passage. It was a dance with destiny, a chance to prove himself worthy of the legacy that surged through his veins. The daunting thought of the 20% of boys who never returned from this test gnawed at him like a ravenous wolf. But he pushed it aside, shaking off the frigid doubt that clawed at his mind, steeling himself for what lay ahead. As the wind howled through the trees, he thought he could hear them. The voices of the ancestors, beckoning him, their ethereal fingers brushing against his skin like a lover's caress. They urged him to embrace the cold, to welcome the discomfort, for it was in the depths of pain that true strength was forged. The flickering flames of the torches danced in rhythm with his heartbeat, a pulsing reminder that he was not alone. Yet, as he took a step forward, the weight of his lineage pressed down on him like the thick snow underfoot. What if he failed? What if he became just another story, whispered only in hushed tones around the fireside, a cautionary tale told to frighten the next generation? He hesitated, his resolve faltering, the shadows of doubt creeping back in. The trees loomed overhead, their gnarled branches extending like skeletal fingers, waiting to ensnare him. But somewhere deep within, a fire ignited. He was not merely a boy. He was a vessel of the past, a link in a chain that stretched back to the dawn of time. The call of the ancestors thundered in his ears, urging him to step forward, to embrace his destiny. He took a deep breath and stepped into the clearing, the cold biting at his skin, the silence amplifying the sound of his heart pounding. What lay in the darkness beyond? Could it be more terrifying than the fears that stalked him from within? The wind howled like a banshee, slashing through the trees surrounding the clearing. Beneath the flickering glow of pine resin torches, a boy sat hunched over, his breath misting in the frigid air. The temperature had dipped to 15 degrees, and each exhale felt like a whispered plea for warmth that would never come. He clenched the bone-handled knife in his hand, the simple runes etched into the hilt a reminder of the tribe's legacy. But in this moment, all that legacy felt like a cold weight rather than a source of strength. Around him, silence reigned, an oppressive blanket that stifled even the softest sounds of the forest. Each crackle of the fire seemed to echo the thumping of his heart, a constant reminder of the 20% chance he wouldn't return as a man. Was he truly ready for this? The initiation had promised glory, but now, staring into the darkness, he felt more like a lamb sent to slaughter than a warrior en route to honor. His eyes darted to the shadows, where branches twisted grotesquely against the night sky. Every rustle seemed to whisper his name, taunting him, teasing his fear. He could remember the stories told by firelight, the brave ones who conquered the trials and returned as legends. But what if he wasn't one of them? What if, instead of glory, he found only the biting chill of solitude and despair? The boy's muscles ached, fatigue pooling in his limbs like lead. He fought to keep his eyes open, but they grew heavy, a physical manifestation of his wavering spirit. In that moment, he questioned not only his resolve, but also the very purpose of this test. Was it really about proving strength, or was it merely about surviving the night? An icy wind gusted, wrapping around him like the cold fingers of mortality. And for a moment, he nearly surrendered to its embrace. But as he gripped the knife harder, the runes felt warm against his skin, igniting a spark of defiance. He had to push through. He had to endure. The fire flickered, casting long, dancing shadows as if urging him to rise, to stand, to fight against the darkness encroaching on his mind. But as fatigue clawed its way into his bones, a singular thought screamed at him. Could he truly withstand the relentless grip of fear and the bitter cold? Did he have the strength to emerge from the shadows? Or would he fade into the night like the many before him, never to return? He drew in a sharp breath, fighting against the pull of sleep. But the night stretched endlessly before him, a yawning chasm of uncertainty. In that expanse, terror and tenacity collided, and he was left teetering on the edge. The torches flickered ominously, their flames dancing as if whispering secrets of the night. Would he find the will to endure, or was he destined to succumb to the darkness? Block goal. Write a single cinematic camera shot, up to 3,000 characters in modern American English, West Coast tone, third-person omniscient style. Insert at least one rhetorical question, 1 per 300 words, and include 1 to 2 concrete Viking period details, pine resin torches, runic bone-handled knife, 10 degrees C to 20 degrees C frost, 20% failure rate. End with a 20 to 50 word unresolved emotional hook following the hook rules. The wind howled through the jagged cliffs, a mournful song that threaded between the shadows of the towering pines. The boy stood at the edge of the initiation circle, feet bare against the frozen earth, the chill slicing through him like the edge of a runic bone-handled knife. Around him, the torches flickered, pine resin dripping, their acrid scent mingling with the biting cold, a reminder that even fire could feel like a cruel joke in these frigid temperatures. It was 15 degree Gus, and he could see his breath clouding in front of him, a ghostly whisper of his doubts. Tonight was the night, the moment of truth. His heart raced as he gazed into the circle, the faces of his peers illuminated by the dancing flames, eyes wide and reflecting a mixture of fear and excitement. They had come together for this, yet only each boy could face the final test alone. An initiation that would decide their fates, one that would define who they would become, or perhaps who they wouldn't. But what truly lay beyond that threshold? Would he return to the warmth of his home, or would he become another specter haunting these woods, a grim statistic in the 20% who never returned? The shaman stepped forward, chanting in a language that felt both ancient and immediate, weaving the air with promises of strength and valor. The words wrapped around the boy, igniting a fire in his belly. He could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on him. It was time to choose. He had known the rumors. Some boys had faltered, their courage slipping away like frost melting under a reluctant sun. The elders spoke of them in hushed tones, their names fading into shadows, becoming tales of caution meant to send shivers down the spines of the young. He held the knife tightly, its cool handle grounding him as he scanned the circle. The light threw his friends into sharp relief, their faces a mix of celebration and trepidation. And for a moment, he felt tethered to their shared history, a brotherhood forged in the fires of hardship. This was not just about him. It was about them, about legacy, about defining what it meant to be a man among men. But would he make the right choice? Was he ready to embrace the path that awaited him, with all its glory and its darkness? The chanting swelled, a crescendo of sound that electrified the air, filling the boy with a surge of determination. He took a step forward, heart pounding, thoughts racing. This was his moment, and beyond this circle lay uncertainty. Freedom or failure, glory or ghost. And as he stood there, knife poised under the flickering flames, he felt the weight of his ancestors pressing down on him. He didn't just have to choose for himself, he had to choose for them too. But would he find the courage needed to carve his own destiny? Or would he let the frost of doubt steal his fire? Previously on Blood Stains the Ground as young warriors confront their initiation, each facing the possibility of failure. The howl of the wind whispered through the frost-bitten trees, carrying a scent of pine resin that mingled with the metallic tang of blood. A pair of torch flames flickered in the darkness, illuminating the rough-hewn faces of the gathered warriors, their breath forming ghostly clouds in the frigid air. They stood in a semicircle, urchins clad in mismatched furs, their eyes betraying a mix of fear and determination. The ground beneath them, a hard crust of frozen earth, felt like a warning. It was a night like no other, and the stakes were as high as the jagged peaks surrounding the clearing. Vigo clenched a bone-handled knife, its runes glinting under the torchlight, whispering tales of ancient victories and the price of valor. His heart thudded against his ribs, echoing the beat of the drums that seemed to resonate from the very soil. He remembered the stories. 1 in 5 boys wouldn't return from this rite, their fates sealed in the icy grip of the wilderness. But tonight, he was determined to carve his own fate, to prove he was more than just another boy from the village. The taste of ambition was sweet, but tinged with the bitterness of dread. The torchlight danced on the walls of the trees, illuminating the faces of his companions. Their eyes, hollow with the weight of expectations, flicked toward him. But could he bear the burden of their gaze? Could he rise above the unrelenting chill and the fear that clawed at the edges of his mind? He felt the sharp air carve into his lungs, reminding him of the stakes, reminding him that true strength was never given freely. It demanded sacrifice. As the elders began to chant, their guttural voices rising into the night, the heat of the torches felt distant and futile against the bone-deep chill of 10 degrees. He took a step forward, his movements hesitant, almost reverent. The ground crunched beneath him, a reminder that he was stepping into the unknown, a place where courage would be tested and the cost of strength revealed. Then he held the knife aloft, its blade reflecting the flickering light, and a silence fell over the crowd. It was a moment suspended in time, charged with unspoken possibilities. Would he emerge as a warrior, or would he join the ranks of those who had faltered? All eyes were on him, and for a brief instant, he felt the intoxicating rush of hope and fear mingling in his veins, a cocktail of adolescent bravado. But then came the question that pierced through the tension like a blade. What price would he pay for strength? And as the shadows deepened around him, he felt the weight of his choice settle heavily on his shoulders. He didn't want to scream, but found himself breathless, trapped between expectation and reality. His palms were slick with blood, and the night seemed to stretch out before him like a yawning chasm. Would he leap into the darkness, or would he be swallowed whole? And as the final chant echoed through the air, the world around him faded, leaving only the pulse of his heart and the chilling realization that not all would survive the night. As the first light breaks, the boy reflects on his journey, understanding the weight of his actions. The frost clung to the ground like a whisper, each blade of grass encased in a crystalline prison that glittered in the dawn light. The boy, now a young warrior, knelt on the cold earth, feeling the chill seep through his skins and into his bones. The pine resin torch that had burned through the night flickered weakly beside him, its acrid scent mingling with the crisp morning air. He could still hear the echoes of laughter and shouts from the night before, the pulse of camaraderie that only forged in the heat of shared trials. But now, as he watched the sun rise, spilling hues of orange and gold across the horizon, those memories felt distant, like the fading warmth of a fire left unattended. Before him lay the small, runic, bone-handled knife, its surface smooth from years of use. He had earned it, just like the other boys who had braved the cold, who had risked everything in the name of their kin and the gods they served. But while a quarter of them would never return, he felt the weight of the choice he had made, reflecting on the price of bravery. He had survived, yes, but at what cost? Did valor always come with this accompanying burden, or was it the price of ignorance? As the sun peaked higher, the boy finally considered the journey that had led him here. Each step through the snow, every frigid breath he took, had been a lesson in the harsh realities of life. The trials had stripped away the boyhood games he once relished, revealing the burgeoning man beneath. And yet, as the truth settled in, he grappled with a question that draped over him like a heavy cloak. Could he ever truly be free of the ghosts of those who hadn't made it? The ones whose laughter now haunted the corners of his mind? The landscape around him began to awaken, birds flitting from branch to branch, their songs breaking the silence that had accompanied his night of reflection. The promise of a new day felt both exhilarating and daunting. He was a warrior now, a bearer of scars and stories, yet he felt a gnawing unease. Did he have the strength to honor the fallen, to carry their hopes and dreams forward? Or would he falter when the time came to take up the mantle of leadership? As the first rays of sunlight warmed his face, he stood, gripping the knife tightly. The blade glinted like a promise in the dawn light, a reminder of the trials yet to come. But lingering in his chest was the question that begged for an answer. What awaited him beyond the horizon, in the world of men and gods, was shrouded in uncertainty. But one thing was clear. The shadows of his past would follow him, whispering their truths as he stepped forward. The weight of his decisions hung heavy in the air, and as he took a tentative step toward the rising sun, he wondered if he had the strength to carry it all. Would he rise to the occasion, or would the burden of his choices crush him under its weight? As dawn broke over the frost-kissed village, the first light glinted off the blades of the gathered warriors, shimmering like a mirage in a barren desert. A chill hung in the air, biting at the edges of his skin, each breath forming clouds that vanished as quickly as his childhood. He had stepped into the darkness of the initiation as a boy, but the shadows had sculpted him into something new. Emerging from the woods, he felt the pulse of the village, felt their eyes draw him back into the fold. The pine resin torches flickered in the morning breeze, crackling softly, filling the air with the acrid scent of burning wood, stirring memories of nights spent around the fire, laughing and dreaming of glory. But glory was a fickle mistress. He hesitated, the weight of the bone-handled knife tucked into his belt a tangible reminder of the price of bravery. Just days ago, he had crossed the threshold as an untested boy. But who was he now? Was he the hunter who survived, Or would he become a ghost in the eyes of those he once called kin? He stepped forward, toward the gathering crowd. The familiar faces twisted into strange masks of expectation. Would they see the marks of his trial, the faint darkening of his brow, the shadow in his eyes? He scanned the faces of his family, searching for acceptance, but all he found were questions. In a society where failure loomed like winter's frost, could he truly claim his place among them, knowing that 1 in 5 boys never returned from the darkness? As he neared the circle, the laughter of children echoed, sweet yet haunting, a reminder of innocence lost. A small boy, no older than 7, clutched a wooden sword, eyes wide with awe. "Did you fight monsters?" he shouted, voice bright against the somber backdrop of the village square. How could he respond? The monsters were not what they had imagined. They were whispers of doubt, the freezing air thick with the fear of the unknown. The village elders stood off to the side, their expressions inscrutable. The rune-inscribed stones at their feet a testament to the lives they had lived and the paths they had chosen. Would they embrace his return, or would it be met with the silent judgment reserved for those who failed to conquer their fears? He stood at the threshold, the crowd's eyes boring into him, and felt the weight of expectation settle like a cloak over his shoulders. Was this the moment he had longed for? Or were they waiting for him to falter, to show that the darkness had taken more than it had given? His heartbeat drummed in his ears, a reminder of the life he had fought to reclaim. But as he lifted his chin, the uncertainty twisted in his gut. What would he say to the family who had lost so many? And as the first whispers of recognition fluttered through the crowd, he took a step forward, into the unknown. The faces blurred in an ocean of hope and dread, and he felt the world tighten around him like a noose. Would they see him as a hero, or would he forever be haunted by the shadows? As dawn broke over the frost-bitten horizon, the world lay cloaked in a soft white shroud, the kind that whispers of quietness but has a way of amplifying the echoes of the past. He stood at the edge of the forest, his breath curling like smoke in the bitter cold, temperatures hovering somewhere between 10 degrees and 20 degrees. A shiver ran down his spine, not from the chill, but from the weight of memories pressing against him, heavy as the armor he'd shed the night before. He had danced with shadows, confronted the darkness within, and yet here he was, standing on the precipice of an old life and a new one. The line between them blurred like the horizon in the distance. The flickering glow of pine resin torches still danced in his mind, a haunting reminder of the initiation rite that had reshaped him. Each flame had crackled with the weight of unspoken words, an invitation to the abyss that had claimed so many before him. 20% of boys never returned from that sacred ground, a statistic that draped over him like a leaden cloak. What did it mean to survive when survival felt like a curse? His hands clenched around the hilt of his bone-handled knife, its runes whispering ancient promises of strength and valor. The blade reflected the first light of day, a cruel reminder of what he had become and what had been left behind. He wondered if the others felt it too, the burden of memories, of choices made in the throes of fear and bravery alike. Did they carry their pasts like a second skin? Or had they shed them like the bloodied rags that once marked their initiation? Each breath filled him with a sense of foreboding. The frost in the air was biting, but the chill that ran deeper, one that gnawed at his very soul, felt far worse. The ghosts of those who had not returned whispered through the trees, their silent accusations hanging heavy in the mist. He closed his eyes, trying to block out their voices, the relentless tug of what was lost. At the heart of the forest, he had faced a reckoning that defied understanding, a clash between who he had been and who he was, now meant to be. But how could he reconcile the boy who had once known the warmth of family, of laughter, with the man who now bore the scars of initiation? The ghosts wouldn't let him forget, nor would the blood on his hands wash away. He stood there, caught between the two worlds, acutely aware that the dawn was merely an illusion, a thin veneer over the darkness still lurking beneath the surface. And yet, in that quiet moment, he felt a flicker of hope. Was it possible to rise from the ashes of memory like the phoenix? Or was he forever bound to the shadows of the past? And as the sun crested the horizon, casting long shadows that seemed to reach out to him, he felt the heartbeat of the forest beneath his feet, a reminder that every step forward could lead him deeper into the unknown, or back into the dark. Block goal. The boy grapples with the weight of his lineage and the responsibilities that accompany it. Imagine this. A boy stands before a massive stone altar, pine resin torches flickering in the frigid air. The scent of burning wood mixes with the frost-laden breeze, a heady reminder of the ancient traditions that bind him to the past. He shivers in the Tendarcy chill, yet the cold seems insignificant against the warmth of the fire's glow. The flames dance like the spirits of those who came before, warriors who carved their names into the fabric of history. He clutches a bone-handled knife, inscribed with simple yet powerful runes, a token of his lineage. This is not just metal. It's a piece of the legacy that whispers secrets of valor and sacrifice. Around him, the village gathers, their breath visible in the air, creating a soft fog that swirls and disappears. Old men with weathered faces recount tales of bravery, of battles fought against insurmountable odds. Young boys listen with wide eyes, their imaginations ignited by stories of conquest and honor. The boy feels the weight of their words press against his chest, a palpable sense of expectation. What if I'm not worthy, he wonders, the question echoing in the depths of his mind. He knows that roughly 20% of boys who face this initiation never returned, their stories swallowed by the cold, unforgiving earth. The village elder, wrapped in furs, approaches him, eyes sharp as flint. "You will carry our legacy," the elder declares, voice low yet filled with an intensity that sets the boy's heart racing. A warrior is not just a fighter, he is a storyteller, a keeper of traditions. The boy's gaze drifts to the elder's hands, knotted and worn, calloused from years of wielding a sword and sharing knowledge. He thinks of the circle of stones, the echoes of laughter and screams that once filled the air, and how they shaped the community's identity. As the elder continues, the boy's mind wanders to the meaning of it all. He recalls his father's words, spoken late at night as they huddled by the fire. Fear can be the edge of a blade, but it is duty that thrusts it forward. He grapples with the realization that the responsibility to uphold tradition weighs heavier than any sword. Will he possess the courage to shoulder this burden? The flames crackle, and the boy knows that tonight will mark a turning point. He will step into the circle, a vessel for the stories of those who came before. But as he steels himself for what lies ahead, a cold gust sweeps through, snuffing out one of the torches. In the sudden darkness, doubt seeps in like the frost creeping through the ground. He doesn't cry. He doesn't turn away. And as the last flicker of light dances on the knife's blade, he wonders, what kind of warrior will he become when the shadows close in? Block goal. Rising anticipation as he steps into the unknown. Include a rhetorical question and details about the Viking period. As dawn crept over the horizon, the first light of day pushed aside the suffocating darkness, illuminating the frost-covered ground that had become all too familiar. He stood at the edge of the clearing, the air biting at his skin, a reminder that winter still clutched its icy fists around the world. The temperature hovered around 15 degrees, yet the chill in his bones felt less significant now, like a whisper from the past, reminding him of the trials he had faced. The pine resin torches, flickering in the distance, beckoned him back to the warmth of the village, where life continued to pulse, a heartbeat of humanity amidst the frigid expanse. with a bone-handled knife strapped to his belt, its smooth, runic inscription invisible now in the dim light. He was no longer the boy who had knelt in the snow, blood smeared across his chest, trembling with fear. The initiation had stripped him bare, not only of his childhood, but of his doubts, handing him the strength of the ancestors. He had survived where many had faltered. The grim statistic of failure weighed on him. Roughly 20% of boys never returned from the sacred trial. But he had returned, and he had emerged stronger. What lay ahead remained a mystery, an unopened door gaping into the void of possibility. With every breath, he could taste the promise of adventure mingling with the frosty air. He closed his eyes for a moment, envisioning the village beyond the trees, where laughter filled the longhouse and the smell of roasted game wafted through the air. How could he reconcile his newfound strength with the burden of responsibility that awaited him? As he took a decisive step forward, the earth crunched beneath his boots, each sound echoing against the backdrop of the waking world. He felt the weight of the knife against his thigh, a talisman of his past, a promise of protection. And with it came the realization that he was not just moving toward something. He was moving away from something too. The ghost of fear still lingered, a specter from the initiation, but it no longer controlled him. He had wrestled with that darkness, and now he was ready to carve his own path. The path ahead twisted and turned, obscured by the veil of uncertainty. Shadows danced along the forest edges, taunting him with unspoken challenges. With each step, he felt the pulse of the earth beneath him, and the weight of expectation settled squarely on his shoulders. He was ready, or at least he hoped he was. But would the strength he had gained be enough to face what awaited him? The wind howled through the trees as if it were answering him, a reminder that the future was as unpredictable as the weather in a Norse winter. He took a deep breath, the cold air filling his lungs, and stepped forward into the unknown, heart racing with the thrill of possibility. And as he did, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything he had learned was merely the beginning. What challenges awaited him beyond the horizon, and would he rise to meet them?